everybody, and welcome here today. And we are here today with one of the genuine legends of the industry here, Mr. John Durrant, of, as far as I know it, Waterfall, Durrant and Barkley, Dr. Photo, and now DCTR.
Yeah.
John, welcome. How are you today, sir?
I'm wonderful. Thank you very much. And how are you, Simon?
All right. You know, I always get by.
I think
glass half full attitude seems to help
nature's forces.
I'll take that. So I'm very good at taking insults and absorbing them as compliments. So thank you for that, John. I'm going to talk today. We wanted to tee this up because you're handing over the reins of the fantastically successful and doing a really positive professional job for many clients over the years, and handing over the reins to Tom, your son, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. It's Tom has really been running the show for the past 18 months, but now we've done it formally. And he's now taken on the mantle of managing director of Dr. Formerly Dr. Photo. And we're growing exponentially. And it's largely due to the work that he's done with the fantastic team that we've got working here.
Well, it had to all come from somewhere, and that's what we're talking about today. As much as forget about him, I know he's off screen, but we're gonna. Yeah. This is all about you today, John. And look, I heard that, and first of all, absolutely congratulations. You know, it's a wonderful business, and you know, dare I say, it could only be the business it was today because of obviously everything that you've put into it, and it's testament to that it's in such safe hands, of course, that you are able to hand that over to Tom. So first and foremost, can we just take it back to, you know, as they famously say, back to the beginning? Where did it all start for you in agency?
Well, I left school at 16, and 3 years I was stuffing envelopes at Manning Company. Back in those days, you weren't allowed to see anybody or speak to anybody. I was just kind of the back room boy. Yeah. Stuffing envelopes with property details. So, but 20, I had my first office in Aldershot, and then went to various other offices. Went to Basingstoke. There was fairly hard times around Basingstoke. It was a period of when the country was going through some bad economic crises, yeah, and a lot of people got made redundant. Didn't, but I felt that probably time to move on, and then worked for. Well, in fact, no. What I did, I started my first estate agency. that's what I did, that didn't work out too well. But it was one of those experiences. It was about 3 years of running an estate agency. Really old car, had to put up my own for sale boards, yeah. And didn't have a lot of fun doing that. And the money dried up, so sold that business to somebody else. Worked for somebody else, then got headhunted. Went to work in Woking, bought that business from them, and then that got bought by the Pru. In '87, yeah, which they paid me quite a lot of money for, which I was very grateful. It was at a time when, again, the country was about to go into economic meltdown. That's what often happens with the estate agency is that things happen outside of your control. You have no way of controlling the economy. All you can do really is respond to it, so. I sold out to the Pru, worked for them for a few years. That was horrible. And then started up again with Andy Waterfall in Woking. So started our own business, reached the point where I wanted to kill people about 15 or 16 years ago. And then became a property photographer and started photographing for Knight Frank, etc. and Savills.
Yeah, let's get right to the nub of that then. Where did the passion for photography? Have you always had that passion for photography? It goes years, or how did it burgeon?
I don't have a passion for photography at all. What I have a passion for is property marketing. For me, it was always about the house. It goes back to my second boss at Manning Company, who was a bit of a lunatic. A man called Hugh Winter. He's only recently dead, actually, but Manning Co didn't like him very much. And they decided to hold a debate between him and the latest star in the business, a guy called Alan Preston, I think it was, Alan Thompson. They'd sent him off to New Zealand to find out how property was sold there. Yeah. And so they held a debate at the Cottage Hotel in Woking. And there were about 30 or 40 of us at Manning Co. Then. There weren't that many, although it's a massive firm now, it's not that, no, it wasn't that big back then. And there was a debate, and Alan Thompson, the debate was, should there be gimmicks in a estate agency? And Thompson got up and spoke for 20 minutes about why there shouldn't be gimmicks. We're a profession, etc., and we don't get into gimmicks. They were all broke for a cup of tea, went back to our desks, back to our seats, and we were talking to each other, and after a few minutes it got really noisy, and then Hugh stood up and he took a plastic bag, took a hat out of a plastic bag, and it had an arrow through it, and we all stopped and looked at him in stunned silence. And he said, there you are, you've got your attention with the gimmick, and estate agency is all about getting attention for the houses you're selling. Well, for me, that was an epiphany. It basically meant that everything I did from that day forward was about getting attention for the houses I was selling. And, you hear too often, I think, that estate agency is a people business, but of course people are involved, but the actual business is marketing property. And for me, photography was a way to show property at its best. And that's why, everything that I did from that day forward. We actually at Waterfalls, we sold houses for other estate agents. Directors of large estate agency companies come to us to ask us to sell their houses for them, and we would say, well, why don't you ask your own company to do it? And they said, well, I wouldn't want to, thank you very much. They actually used language which was a bit rougher than that, but it was they wanted us to market their own properties, and I took that as a very positive thing. Our property marketing was beyond anything that anybody else was doing back at those times.
I love that distinction between the property marketing though and the photography there. That does make total sense to me. Do I glean then from what you just said there? Do you get very frustrated that there are so many, I was going to say hucksters, that's probably be a bit fair, but there's so many solutions out there that promise you to do X, Y, Z to help move the home, where there isn't just a focus on the absolute core skill itself of that photography of the property, that marketing of the property itself.
I think it's the biggest trick that estate agents are missing. Although for the past 10 years, I've been evangelizing about, getting your properties noticed for the right reasons right from the beginning. If you can get your properties noticed for the right reasons, then you'll get much more interested in them. Rightmove had a blog out about 6 or 7 years ago that actually showed photographs of a property that was photographed badly and photographed well.
Yeah.
And they said that they were able to get 4 times the number of inquiries with the better photographs. It's actually really obvious, isn't it, that the better it looks in that beauty parade that we call Rightmove or Zoop or whatever, the more likely you are to attract interest in the property. If the houses above and below yours look rough and yours looks amazing, then you're going to get more interest in it. And that's really when I projected most of my interest in the business in the past and now is the reason for Dr. Photo, trying to make properties the star of the show rather than being ancillary to it and not dealing with estate agents just because they're personalities, but because they're actually really good at getting your house noticed by the right people.
What do you think? You mentioned there before that your colleague had gone to New Zealand, and of course New Zealand and Australia are, I didn't realise that it was as far back as then as well, but they're very well renowned, obviously, for marketing because of probably because of how much is vendor paid advertising over there, that it supports the professional. Why do you think it has been, though, that they seized on I suppose just doing the basics right?
I don't know. I think they just did. I'm talking about 53 years ago.
That's why I'm so surprised. I can sort of. Yeah. I could understand how they might have sort of done it relatively recently, but it does surprise me that actually they've been doing it even as far back as then.
Yeah, they've been a good 10 years ahead of the UK property market all that time, and we've been slow to catch up. I think really in the UK, there were a number of years when it was like shooting fish in a barrel, selling property. You didn't actually have to try that hard to sell the property. I think what happened was that you just got on. If it's not broken, why fix it? Type of attitude, and I think that will catch up, or has been catching up, with a lot of estate agents who just got stuck in the mud and not actually move forward. So it's one of the things that agents have to do. Really, I always try to stay at the cutting edge. At Waterfall Durrant, Barclay, now Waterfalls, always trying to stay at the cutting edge, and to make sure that we stood out from all the competition that was there.
What does best practice and worst practice look like to you in terms? What are some of the big wins you can get from photography, and what are the no-nos that you should avoid?
Well, there's a technical thing that estate agents can do straight off that would help to improve their photos. That's low ISO. It's a setting on your camera, and basically you think of it as a quality setting for your camera. If you use a high ISO, it will enable you to take photos with fast shutter speeds in dark situations, which sounds great until you realize that what you get out is rubbish, because it looks horrible. Because you've got these little specks, rather than nice tones, you have photographs that look out of focus and not at all interesting. Certainly not professional. But in order to use a low ISO, you need to use a tripod.
Yeah.
And that means that you can take the photograph with a longer shutter speed, but the quality of the image will be that much better. So that's if you can do that, and if you can make your walls vertical and your interiors rather than standing up. I'm 6'5", and so if you stand up and photograph down into a room, your walls are going to lean in like that. It's horrible as well. If you look through any House and Homes magazine, you won't see photographs with walls like that, like CCTV camera type images. You'll see images with the walls that are looking vertical. Those are two really good tips if agents can take those on board. When I teach in the workshop, it's a big thing. I always say in my workshops that if I were Prime Minister, I'd make it a criminal offence to take your photographs with walls that were leaning like that, because that's not what people actually see.
No, it does make sense. And what about the no-nos? What are the things that frustrate you when you see when it's done poorly? Apart from that example, just thoughtlessness about taking photographs. Just not actually thinking about what could be. I think what it is a basic lack of knowledge of the difference that it can make to the estate agent, the estate agency business, the vendors, and the negotiator, who presumably is on commission, not knowing that what they do is going to have such an impact, or such a negative impact on their business. If they don't actually try to get it right. I mean, sometimes all you have to do to take an outside photograph is to walk up and down outside the house, and get the best angle. Instead of just walking outside and going click like that and walking back in again. It's a lack of compassion, or lack of passion rather, that I would say that if you are passionate about this,
you will definitely benefit from better sales. I've shown that all my career, that by getting really good images of photographs, getting the property noticed for the right reasons, you will definitely benefit because you will get more business. Yeah. And your vendors will be happier with you. People will come to you. You won't have to worry so much about commission rates, etc. I used to take out an example of the one house that was photographed badly, and with my example of what we were able to do, and simply all you had to do is say, well, which way do you want it? Do you want it like our competitors? You didn't have to say anything bad about the competitor. You just had to say, do you want it like that, or do you want it like this? If you were looking for a house to buy, which one would you look at?
It's very powerful, that, isn't it? I mean, that's just as you said, you're not doing anything other than just showing the reality of the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just lack of thought, passion, wanting to get it right. That's the biggest thing that really makes me a bit angry. No,
and I think it's great to have that passion in that area, isn't it? And that's why you've created such a fantastic niche in the marketplace, because of having that attention to detail is brilliant. And
I never set out, Simon, to win friends and influence people. Although it's one of my favourite books, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I never set out for that. What I've always set out to do is to be the best at actually what we do, best at property marketing. That's what it's all about for me.
That's great. That's fantastic. And what do you consider your proudest achievement to date, John?
Passing the business on to Tom, without any question or doubt. Having business here that he has been able to take on to greater things. I've always been a better starter than a finisher, he's able to take this business on to. Sorry, that's the train going past.
Okay. I thought it was someone falling over in the office. I thought you might have to break.
So passing business on to Tom without any question about it.
Excellent. And who are the people that you respect most in this industry, outside of obviously in your own business?
In property, there was a guy called Roger Carson from Manningham. I don't know if you remember him from years ago. He was an excellent estate agent. Probably the best estate agent I ever worked with was the guy that's now dead, unfortunately, a guy called Martin Gibbs. He was such a character, and the sort of person who could automatically put the person together with the house. So a house would come onto the market, and he would know who was going to buy that property. It's one of the things that kind of concerns me about estate agency today, because there is a lot of reliance on CRM systems.
I was just going to ask you. I was just going to say, is that does it feels like that's been kind of leached out of it by the technology side of things to a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah, my tip. Really, I think CRM systems are great because they definitely save money. When you don't have to worry about postage, for instance, you can send everything out by email and electronically, and print has now gone down. But the issue, I think, is really how do you keep contact with people? And I think my tip would be to have a hot box. I was known by my second lunatic boss as Mr. Mole, because I sat in the corner of the office and I'd be phoning my applicants all day. I would have a hot box and I'd have cards in there, and I'd have little notes that were personal, about that particular applicant. It enabled me to keep much better connection with people, whereas when it's on a computer, it's actually really quite hard. I found. I think if there's a way, to have, it might be that CRMs have developed enough so that you can have a little hot box, in that way, a list, but it doesn't seem quite as easy to use to phone people from a list as it does from cards, and being able to make notes on it.
that's that scalability, which is fantastic. Obviously, that technology does, if it's not done right, can make you lose that human touch and that empathy, can't it? And that is always a balancing act, I feel. Yeah,
it is. You know, it's where the people business is actually. Yeah, the reality is, if it is a people business, then you don't leave it all to the computer.
Yeah.
There are a lot of agents, I think, who probably do leave a lot too much to the computer to, for their own benefit.
Yeah. And with your estate agency hat on, what do you see as the biggest challenge to the industry at the moment, per se?
I think there are quite a few agents who are sleepwalking into oblivion, because there are so many apps and services that are available now. And this is probably, I'm not preaching against the apps that are good and valuable. Apps that are good and valuable would include, obviously, Dr. Photo, or Doctor, as it is now, because those are time saving. But when you have an app that I saw the other day being written about that claims to be able to value property more accurately than estate agents, I'm thinking, actually, all you actually need is another app that can handle the negotiation, and you don't need estate agents.
Yeah.
You've got some you've got some apps. We've got systems that people that will help you with viewings and probably would write your details for you. You've got photographers. Basically, what is there left for an estate agent to do? I'm sure that there probably is one out there that would handle the after sale thing. You probably get somebody like Yodel to do that. To manage the sale as it's being processed. I mean, that obviously is a big part of a estate agency. But negotiation is in fact the only thing that's missing. And then if you had an app that tied all of those apps together, you would have like 22nd century property market, but that would leave estate agents very much out in the cold.
Yeah, I think we're a way off yet. If the apps I'm using, they struggle with some of the basics, so I don't think we're quite there yet. But I get your point, isn't it? It does feel like, to me, I take it as a positive. I mean, there's lots of times where technological revolution does mean that people end up losing their jobs and everything else. But ultimately, what people often forget is the opportunities and the new jobs, and it allows them to focus on. So hopefully, by doing and it doesn't make sense, really, does it, to have a person doing something that at least a computer can do better, but we know what the humans can do better at the moment. So concentrate them on doing that. I think
if you've got something that saves time, and you use that time to do what to speak to your clients, for instance, for Doctor, the image editing, a facelift takes us about 4 minutes to do. Well, if you're doing 60 of those, and that's 4 hours, and so that's 4 hours that you're not actually then able to speak to somebody else. And in fact, there are a lot of estate agents who love to play with Photoshop.
Yeah.
And I think probably, in all honesty, I was one of those myself towards the latter part of my estate agency career. I'd often be sitting there at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, editing photos. But of course, nowadays, we're about to launch the AI aspect of Doctor. That's probably about 3 or 4 weeks away. It's been promised. We promised it in the summer, but in fact, it has turned into a bit of a National Health Service software project, and it's taken a lot longer than it should have taken. But we are getting there, and
tech takes time. That's the one thing I know, John.
Tech is
right.
Yeah.
And which of the suppliers catch your eye out there at the moment? Are there ones that you think that they are delivering in that kind of space you just identified there?
Well, I mean, people like KeyZap, I think are valuable because they supply. Having something like that has got to be much better than a key book. that would often go missing at the moment when you wanted to let a key go out, or you couldn't find a key ever. So being able to keep track of whatever it is that you're doing, saving time, anything that really saves time, so that you can talk to people. But as I said, not to the extent that it takes away the value of what the human can do. Certainly, I think it's absolutely rubbish having an app claiming to value property more accurately than estate agents can. You might want to cut that bit out.
I love it. So let's say, John, so I'm Whaley, the magic genie, and you've got 3 wishes to help improve the industry. Could be any aspect of it at all. What do you think? What would your first wish be to try and make things better?
I think as for estate agents to pay a lot more attention to their property marketing, and to realize that they're in the property marketing and sales business. They're not just in property sales. It is that combination of property marketing and sales that I always like to making a cake, a fruit cake, and leaving the fruit out. If you leave the fruit out, you end up with a cake, but it's not a fruit cake. And if the objective is to be the best at what you do, then you surely have to be really, really good at property marketing as well, because essentially you are the property marketing department for your client. You're there to tell them. One of the things I would say is for agents to take control of the process of putting a property onto the market. In America, if you've got a wardrobe that's not tidy, you're told that you have to tidy it up. Otherwise, somebody might open it up and think that you're hiding stuff, especially when it falls out on top of them. For agents to take control of that process, there was this program that I used to watch called Selling Houses years ago. There's a guy called Andrew Winter, and he would go to a house that had been on the market for a year, and he would say, why isn't this house sold then? And they would say, vendors would say, well, I don't know. And he would say, well, I can see you've got lawnmower parts all over your kitchen, and you've got a full-size train set in your master bedroom, and the garden hasn't been touched for about a year, has it? And you're trying to get the same price as the house next door. Do you think that might have an impact? And they would say, oh yes, look rather dejected, and they say, oh yeah. And then he would say, and what did your estate agent say about that? And of course, much more happily, the estate agent didn't say anything about that to us. And then you get the estate agent in, and you say, well, why hasn't this house sold? And the lawnmower parts all over the kitchen, and full-size train set in the master bedroom. And what did you say to the client about this? And the estate agent would look like a complete idiot because he said nothing. So I would say to take control of that process and to realize that you've got a big part to play. You might lose the instruction, but you'll probably get it back in 6 months when they haven't sold it. And you'll be able to explain why they weren't able to sell the property. It's much better to take a long-term view on that. Because at the end of the day, all you end up doing is spending lots of money on the portals, trying to sell houses that you've got no chance of selling because they want the same price as a pristine house next door. You might as well take it to William Hill and put it on a real long shot, and hope for the best, because that's all that will happen. They won't see it as them having skin in the game, because they actually got their eyes closed to that. So I think having passion about what you do in terms of property marketing, involving the client and helping them to understand what it is that they have to do to get the house looking good and presentable, and making it saleable. I think those things will help to improve every estate agent's bottom line.
Great advice. And then, John, what would a John of today say to a fresh-faced you all those years ago with their whole careers ahead of them? What bit of advice would you give them?
to keep going as long as you love doing it, and as the moment you start hating it, find something else to do, because life goes on. There's always something else. But I would say, don't let it, don't fall down at the first hurdle. Keep doing things differently as well. I think you need, for any business to succeed, you need to have a differentiator. You have a pink hat usually. That makes you very different to the other people who are doing or trying to do something similar. It's your personality that makes your business, and that is your differentiator. So I think you find points of differentiation, things that you can do that make you stand out from the crowd.
Great advice. Great advice. And I'm a bit worried to ask this question, considering you just made the point you're 6'5". What's the one surefire thing that makes you lose it?
Being ignored. It's offering advice to people. There was a case I became an anorak on vehicular access across common land, and it was because back in 95, I forget what it was. It was early 2000s. I ended up advising the Conservative Party on the Countryside and Rights of Way Act, and I was involved in getting an appeal through the House of Lords, because local authorities and others who own common land were charging people a lot of money to cross to cross land to their own property. Yeah. In fact, I forget that. Let's just scrub that. What was the question again?
I was just going to say what I was going to say is I was a bit concerned to ask the question, considering you said you were 6'5". But what's the surefire thing made to make you lose it?
Yeah, the surefire thing is being ignored. Offering good advice to people, and then not taking it, and then being blamed for it later. And so it was the situation that we had back in the early 2000s, where it became difficult to sell properties that you had to cross even an 18-inch verge. You have a ransom strip that is effectively owned by the local authority or somebody. One of my customers, I'd known him for years, I said to him, when he put the house on the market, you've got to get this sorted out, this access. And he said, oh no, it'll be all right, my solicitor says it'll be fine. And of course it came the day before exchange of contracts, and suddenly I was the one that had to sort it out. And it was just thinking, it's so frustrating, to get to that point where you think, oh my God, it's just not listening to me at all. And there's so many people like that. I think it was, when I started the business, I had probably 80% of the people I loved and 20% I hated. And as I got, 40 odd years later, I reached the point where it was 80% of the people I hated and 20% I loved. And so that was, and mostly that was because they weren't listening.
Okay, I like it. I like that continual, the inevitable change of those statistics over the years. I can see that happening myself, so I'm with you on that.
There's a Burritos war.
John, thank you very much for taking your time today. As I said, it was I knew I had to get you on camera because we wanted to talk of this. It's always just great to hear someone such passion for such a key area, and I absolutely can see that. I know that Tom's got the business in absolutely great hands, and I just want to congratulate you. And obviously, we will drink to your good health on Friday at a little soiree.
I don't know about the dancing. I think that might be a bit.
I'm trying to find a kilt, so you've got to be careful there. Okay, John, I want to say thank you very much, and have a great day.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Cheers.